Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here. College Countdown on a Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. Glad to have you alongside with us. On today's show, who's got the most to gain? Who has the most pressure this weekend in the college football playoff as it's coming? I think there's some interesting cases to be made about where that pressure is, who it's on, and what the ramifications could be for some losses in the CFP this season. Make sure you all follow us on Twitter at CCPodcastJN. I'm at Josh Neighbors _. You guys can like the video, sub to the channel. That helps a lot. You all can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. Appreciate you all listening and finding us in all of those places. All right. So let's tackle the issues of the day. The big question here is, who has the most at stake this week? And I even made a graphic to go along with this because I give my rankings. I want you all to know what you all think. You can leave a comment in the chat section to let me know what you all think about this. Or also, you guys can tweet at me. Let me know what you guys think about this, because look at these games. You know, there's obviously much at stake because it's a playoff game, yes, but which programs are under fire? Which programs are under pressure? You know, I usually think about this too in terms of the NCAA tournament, because there are like 6 or 7 programs that every single year want to win a national championship, right? Duke and Carolina, Kentucky and UCLA, and even now KU and Baylor and programs like that. And they want Final Four appearances. They want championships. You know, Virginia's of the world, the Villanovas of the world. But there can only be one, right? So there's going to be a lot of disappointed seasons. And obviously, when you make the dance, you feel like you have a chance to win it. But, you know, there is some accomplishment in making it for some of these teams, right? But there is pressure on a good group of these teams. And I actually think the Big Ten, two in the Big Ten from week one, have a lot of pressure. So we're just looking at these round one games, all right? Looking at the round one games about who has the most pressure on them in these first round games. I think it's interesting too, because if you were to ask me this question, like big picture, about who has the most pressure, you know, I would kind of say these top teams are still the top teams. I think Oregon's got some, because we talked about Phil Knight leaving, dying, right? But him getting old and wanting a championship. In fact, the fact this team has been as good as they have been, it looks like this is the coach and the team that could cash in and make it happen for Phil Knight's beloved Oregon Ducks, right? It looks like he is the one that could do it. But obviously, there are hurdles to getting the job done. So, but I would say a lot of pressure is because, like, there's no guarantee you'll be back here. Same thing goes for maybe in Indiana too, right? Oregon will be back in some senses around, but they have this good of a team, the number 1 overall seed. It's hard to know. Maybe the talent's more spread out than normal. So we'll actually see, but you know, you kind of get what I'm saying there. But let's look at this group. All right. So number 1, I went Ohio State. Number 2, Penn State. Number 3, Texas. Number 4, Tennessee. Number 5, we went with Clemson. Number 6, Notre Dame. Number 7, SMU. And number 8, Indiana. Who are my candidates for number 1? All right, the top 3, Ohio State, Penn State, and Texas were my candidates for number 1. Here's why. Ohio State, as good as they have been under Ryan Day, obviously big games have cost them some, especially recently, right? They've beaten Penn State, but they have not been able to beat Michigan as of late. And also they had the loss to Georgia a few years ago as well in the CFP. So it feels like their biggest, and then Oregon this year, the biggest contest. Not like saying he's James Franklin Ryan Day, but there's been a little bit of slippage, if you will. And for me, you know, if they lose this game against Tennessee at home, that'll be back-to-back home games they've lost. The first one they lost caused them to miss out on their conference's championship game. I'm not saying Ohio State is some program in decline right now, but you have to think for Ryan Day and company, this roster they spend a lot of money on. There'll be other rosters that Ohio State spends money on, but I thought this group should be doing a lot better than it is. And they're not as good on the offensive line as it feels like they should be. Now they've been banged up front, but their inability to run between the tackles has been a huge problem. Their outside running game has been pretty good. It just seems like things go in fits and starts. They kind of get way too committed to doing one thing on offense. And you'd think with two minds like Chip Kelly and Ryan Day, you'd be able to put together a pretty good, and Brian Hartline, put together a pretty good offensive game plan that doesn't sputter as much as theirs does. But that being said, This is a huge game because a lot of people are shading towards Tennessee when it comes to the betting markets right now, and I understand why. But still, I think that Ohio State roster is just so good and so talented. And you saw what they can do up front. I mean, Nico Malievi he's played pretty well recently, but this is Ohio State team that one of the best scoring defenses, if not the best. I think it's still the best in the country. And they really only allow like a couple pretty good drives a game. I know Oregon had their way with them, but I just feel like their defense is better than the Tennessee offense. It's just up to how their offense plays. It really is. And they need to cash in the red zone. They need to make sure they're scoring touchdowns. We know the kicking's been an issue for them as well. So Ohio State, I just want to see them start putting it together. I mean, it's about time. And you've got a pretty good chance. I mean, against Tennessee, if you get a win, you're feeling a lot better. And then obviously, if you go and check out the CFP bracket, to look where they're going to head. Now they got kind of screwed with how difficult things are, right? It's not really the most fair thing that Oregon is going to have to play Ohio State or Tennessee. I mean, that's 3 of the 4 or 5 best teams right there. But, you're feeling pretty good about a game against Oregon next, right? You feel pretty good if you're able to get that victory. So, I think Ohio State's got the most on the line for sure with how much they spent on the roster, the way people are looking at Ryan Day. I mean, if they lose in like embarrassing fashion, I think Ryan Day is still the coach, but I mean, it's a conversation. It's definitely a conversation. Now, I don't see them losing in embarrassing fashion. All of their games have been like 1-score games because of their losses have been 1-score losses because of how good their defense is. But if it gets away from their offense, you're a bit concerned. 2, I've got Penn State because here's the thing, like Penn State showed how good of a team they could be in that game against Oregon. Defense got rolled over, but Oregon's offense was a hammer, but so was a Penn State offense, man. They were really, really good in that game. And you can see with Andy Kotelnicki how good of a system he's got and he is a fantastic play caller. I think Penn State's very fortunate that he has not gotten scooped up by anybody just yet in this coaching cycle, but still possible, right? Still possible that it could happen. But they showed how good they can be, and they were pretty close to beating Ohio State this year. Obviously, it was one of the few tough games they had. The thing is, they're better than SMU, and they've got SMU coming to their house, and the conditions are going to be favoring Penn State with the weather. So this is one of those James Franklin moments where it's like, all right, I know it's a big game. And I know what we've said about James Franklin in big games, but like this is an opponent. It's a big game, but it's an opponent that's right outside of that zone for James Franklin. And I think getting one on the board, a playoff win, a CFP win for Penn State would be absolutely huge for them, even if the opponent is lesser. And it's also credit to putting yourself in a situation where you're getting a team like this. And also, if you win this game, you're going to be playing in the Fiesta Bowl against Boise State. So you're going to be playing, if you're able to win this game, you're going to be playing in a situation where you're playing a G5 team. Now you're playing Ashton Genty, but you're playing a G5 team at a neutral site to go to the Final Four. Right? I know Georgia's potentially waiting there later on down the line, but you are setting yourself up for a massive, massive opportunity if you end up beating SMU like you should, because I don't think there's many teams like Penn State talent wise is right there. I mean, Georgia's not like knock your socks off talented. We've seen them this year. They are not, obliterate you. It's crazy to see it. Like they're not that level of talent this year. They are equal measures talented to some of the teams up top, and they can win those games, but they can be dragged in the mud. And Penn State's good enough to beat Georgia. They were good enough to beat Ohio State this year as well. So I think that because of the draw they had, they've got a lot of pressure in round 1 to make this. And look, I'm not going to say it's not going to be a tough game, but you got to get this thing done. James Franklin, this is your chance. This is you climbing the ladder. Grab the money in the bank briefcase and make this thing happen. Okay, that's what I'm saying to you, James Franklin. Number 3, Texas. Yeah, I feel like the pressure's on them, not like to a crazy, crazy extent because they made the CFP last year, but you got Clemson coming in round 1. Clemson making it, great. Proud of you for doing so. But you should be able to beat Clemson at home, especially. I know things have not been looking great for you on offense, but Clemson's defense is good, but it can be had a bit. Texas's defense should be able to shut. I know Clemson's starting to get things going in the passing game, but I've seen Texas shut down better offenses. And their defense is absolutely phenomenal up front. And so let's see if they can cause some problems for this Clemson offensive line. And can they make Cade Klubnik make the mistakes he's been making all season? I think they're well equipped to. This team should be able to because of the physical advantage they have on the defensive side of the football. Honestly, it's almost like this Texas team is kind of built much like those Clemson teams are built, right? The great defensive lines. Now, the big question here is the quarterback, right? The quarterback for them is Quinn Ewers has not been consistent, obviously. And using both guys is good because Arch Manning's athleticism gives them a different dimension, but they don't really have any confidence in him throwing the football just yet. And besides Ryan Wingo, they don't have many big wide receivers. And Ryan Wingo's a freshman, so he's still not used to kind of hauling the rock, hauling the load, if you will, like some of the other guys are. So I think this becomes fascinating from that perspective. I really think that that their offense, like they miss those big receivers, but they should not be tested here. So I think Texas, third most pressure, they're there. Tennessee, I'm putting them fourth because, hey, people like them, right? Now, Josh Heupel's got them there, so they're in the dance. They're good. They're good. They're on their way. They're ascending the way they should. But, man, could you imagine if they do win this game? And not like an SMU beats Penn State way, which we'll talk about here in a bit. But, like, this is a game that people think they're going to be in. And if you go to Ohio State and your defense plays well and you're able to shut down those dynamic athletes and do what other teams have done to them, yes, but go on the road and get that done, the conversation about what Josh Heupel in Tennessee, what caliber they are, because they're on the outside of the championship conversation. They're in that Notre Dame, Tennessee, class right now. We don't talk about them like we do with Oregon and Texas and Georgia and Ohio State, right? They're kind of on that peripheral. Well, a win like this, we start really taking you seriously as not just, a championship contender, yes, but like the program Tennessee is back to, it's almost glory years, right? These are new glory years, you could say. Clemson, I'm putting them at 5 because they've been here before, right? So there is some pressure because the one thing that I've knocked Clemson for, and others have, is that by not using the portal, they've put themselves in a situation where it feels like, hey, man, they're not quite. Clemson is not quite at a spot where they were. And I think it's because of their own doing, not like Clemson doesn't take a lot of transfers. Yes. And don't go the Oregon route. That's not what I'm saying, because they can build really good teams without them. But they need a transfer wideout. They could use really a transfer receiver. They could use a transfer offensive lineman at some spots. So this is a prime candidate roster-wise to be one of those where, hey, the portal is where you finish off your roster, right? That's really what this roster could be. And Dabo's trying to prove that they don't need to be that way. And if they win this game, and I don't think they will, but if they win this game, that would go a long way to kind of proving some doubters wrong, proving me wrong, right? Beating SMU in the AAC championship game when they have not been to a place like, or ACC championship game, when they have not been to a place like that in a while in big games, and you've played in a lot of them over the years. Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a good win, but it's not like some program ascending win. It doesn't prove to me anything about how the quality of their roster compared to top rosters. Let's see if they can do it here. This is a huge, huge test because we saw what Georgia did to them in the beginning of the season. And will it be like that again against a team like Texas that's got Georgia-like qualities in terms of how they can squeeze a life out of you? Number 6 is Notre Dame. They just gave Marcus Freeman a big contract extension, and I think rightfully so. He's got them in the right spot, obviously. This win against Indiana, it would be big. It wouldn't be like a total setback loss. So I think that's why I've got them that got them here, but like they're about this build. I've got a good chance to advance here, obviously, with Georgia waiting in the wings, but I don't think there's like a ton of pressure because this is where Notre Dame should be. And there's some questions about whether they would be able to make it here with that loss to NIU. And they put all of those to bed with how badly they beat teams the rest of the season. Right. So I think with the way Marcus Freeman's team has played, they've kind of eliminated a lot of that doubt. A lot of what people were saying negatively about their team and about their roster. I think he's put some of that to the side right now. So good on him to do that. All right, number 7, I've got SMU, because here's the thing about it. If SMU were to win this game, this is a full reascension, right? Cincinnati's arrival came when they beat Notre Dame, right? That one season a few years ago. It was an arrival game. Because that program had not been here before. This is a chance to re-arrive. This is your Texas is back moment, right? This is what you can do. Like, to me, the Texas is back moment is where they were just beating the hell out of Oklahoma State last year. And I was like, this is what championship football looks like. They can just kill you up front. They got beat by a really skilled, good team that won the Joe Moore Award in Washington last year and had a bunch of great receivers and a really good quarterback. So it was kind of a more complete team. But like this version of Texas, they can just absolutely hammer you. And that's why I saw last year down the stretch, Oklahoma State really signed, seal, delivered their back. I mean, I also, too, by extension, that Alabama game earlier in the year, you could say, hey, they're back. But when they had to put their foot down the back stretch of the season and turn it on, they were thumping teams left and right. And chiefly among them, Texas Tech, and then also Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game. I was like, Sark's got this thing humming. This is an opportunity for SMU to be like, hey, folks, we're all the way back. And Clemson was a chance to kind of assert like we're the new power, but this is a different level. I mean, if they somehow find a way to get this group, which, they end up switching quarterbacks at the beginning of the year, first year in the ACC, lived dangerously a few times, but a lot of transfers. Like, if Rhett Lashley can do this, man, it is a indictment on James Franklin, but like it's a full re-arrival. And then you have SMU and Boise for a spot in the Final Four. How exciting would that be if those two teams were playing? That would be your ultimate Cinderella situation. Rhett Lashley's a good enough coach to go to Penn State and win this game. I feel pretty confident in saying that. But I'm wondering how much last week, like they looked shell-shocked early. I don't think that's going to happen again because they settled in and ended up playing really well against Clemson, and they knew they could hang with them. I don't think that happens again. I really don't think that happens again to them in this game. I think more of it's a later type deal where Penn State stretches it out and distances themselves, which they've done before. So that's how I think it would probably look. And then 8, Indiana, man. Indiana, it's like, they get a bowl appearance every 2 years. You'd be happy with that. What Curt Cignetti has done there is fantastic. And there's no doubt the season's already a success. Now, here's the thing. Notre Dame is somewhat beatable, and I think they have a coaching advantage, Indiana. And there's not too many times you're going to end up at a place like this. As the talent evens out, like when you have down years, you'll have chances to get up in the future, but like the Iowas of the world will take these opportunities. The Washingtons of the world take these opportunities. USCs and UCLAs will kind of have these seasons that Indiana's having right now because they have access to better talent, and they're just better brands. So you kind of have to cash the check, but like also, man, you're Indiana and you made the playoff, and you hammered a lot of teams along the way, and they did a great job. And you asserted the fact that like kids should come and play for this coach. Curtis Rourke is an NFL prospect now, and part because the QB class is weak, but also because of how well he played and the positions that Curt Cignetti and company put him in to succeed. They deserve a lot of credit for the job they've done, and I think it's. They're not just happy to be here. Like they're coming to play, but I mean, there is a certain element of like, if they were to lose this game, how upset can you be? There's not too much pressure on Curt Cignetti and the Indiana program to win this one. So let me know what you all think about this list, about who has the most pressure. You can leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel, all of that and more. All right, folks. CC Podcast JN. That's where you find us on Twitter at Josh Neighbors _ as well. Talk at you all mañana.
We are Rogue Media Sports.